All right, welcome back to the deep dive. And today we're doing something, well, a little different. Usually when we pull a stack of research on Hong Kong, the focus just gets, magnetically drawn to the center.
The peak, the banks and central, yeah.
Exactly, the glossy postcard version of Victoria Harbor.
Hmm.
But the documents we've got today, they're forcing us to look away from all that. We're going to the absolute geographical edge of Hong Kong Island.
To Chai Wan and Susa
To
Wan.
the very end of the line.
And it's such a necessary pivot. I mean, if you only look at the center of a city, you only see what the city wants you to see.
The success story.
The success, the modernity,
Yeah.
right? But if you go to the edge, to the periphery, you see the subconscious of the city. You see what it tried to hide, what it forgot, and what it's still trying to digest.
That is a great way to frame it. The research describes this area not as just some residential or industrial zone, but as a time corridor.
I love that term.
It's this weird space where, 19th century trade routes collide with World War II fortifications, and ancient Hakka settlements are buried under these massive high-rises.
Exactly. And it's because these areas were marginal, literally the end of the train line. They acted as a sort of historical buffer. While Central was busy demolishing everything to build the next skyscraper, the edge was often, well, just ignored. And because it was ignored, layers of history survived there that had been wiped clean everywhere else.
So our mission today is to unpack 5 specific historical stories from this edge, to turn this, misunderstood industrial area into a really deep cultural narrative.
And more importantly, we're going to identify the hidden gems.
Yes.
The actual places you can go to see these layers for yourself. We want to give you the coordinates.
Okay, let's start with something that seems simple on the surface, but is, well, it's a linguistic minefield. The name game.
This is a classic example of administrative intent just crashing head-on into local culture.
So, Chai Wan. I looked up where the name comes from. The literal translation is Firewood Bay.
It's a purely functional name. It comes from the Hakka settlers, who were the original inhabitants. Long before the factories and the MTR, this area was just a dense coastal forest.
So they were loggers.
Basically, yeah. The whole Hakka economy there was based on striking chai, cutting firewood to sell to the city. It's a name rooted in sweat, in labor, in just basic survival.
But the records show this fascinating conflict in the 1950s. The government decides to urbanize the area, build these huge public housing estates, and suddenly the name Chai Wan becomes a problem.
A huge problem. It wasn't just a liability, it was a cultural taboo. In Cantonese, the word chai for firewood, it shares a very specific sound with the phrase la chai.
And la chai is not a good thing.
It's heavy slang. It implies failure, bankruptcy, or kind of packing it in.
So death.
Yeah, or just total ruin. So in a superstitious culture that really values prosperity and luck, moving your family to a place that sounds like Failure Bay it's a non-starter.
So you have the government building these modern apartments trying to solve a housing crisis.
Yeah, and the locals are terrified of the zip code. Precisely.
Wow.
The resistance was strong enough that the colonial government actually proposed a complete rebrand. They wanted to officially change the name to Sui Wan.
Which means?
Emerald Bay.
Emerald Bay. Okay, that sounds like a luxury resort. It's green, it's auspicious, it implies wealth.
It was a clear attempt to sanitize the map,
Yeah.
Overwrite the history of labor, the firewood, with this generic, pleasant image of emeralds. But, and this is why the story is so great, the rebrand failed.
The people just refuse to use it.
The local memory was just too strong. The working class identity of the area completely overrode the government's marketing department. People just kept calling it Chai Wan. The firewood name survived.
But you can still see the scar of this battle today, and this is our first hidden gem.
Yes, if you go to Chai Wan today, look for the Sui Wan estate. The district kept its original name, but that one housing complex, it still wears the Emerald Bay name. It stands there like a concrete monument to a failed PR campaign from 70 years ago.
I love that. It's like a fossil of a bureaucratic struggle. But the naming confusion didn't end there, did it? We have to talk about its neighbor, Si Saiwan.
This is where the name game turns into a game of telephone. I mean, originally this area was just known as Little Chai Wan, Little Firewood Bay.
Right, makes sense. But Saiwan today translates to Western Day, and we're on the easternmost tip of the island. Why on earth is it called Western Bay?
This is a fantastic example of colonial disconnect. To the British cartographers and administrators, the Cantonese word chai sounded incredibly similar to the English pronunciation of the Cantonese word sai,
Which means west.
which means west. So they heard chai, thought sai, and just standardized it on the maps.
So it was just a transcription error? Or just laziness?
A bit of both, probably. So Little Firewood Bay became Little Western Bay, Sisaiwan.
And that one little change effectively wiped the entire history of the woodcutters off the map for that neighborhood.
Yep. It replaced a history of production with a generic compass direction. The wrong one, at that. It just shows how easily local history can be overwritten by the pen of a map maker.
Okay, let's move from the map to the territory. We're going to the very tip of the island, a place called Cape Collinson. And the research highlights two structures here. They sit right next to each other, but they represent two completely different eras of Hong Kong's existence.
You're talking about the lighthouse versus the battery.
Let's start with the lighthouse, the Cape Collinson Lighthouse, built in 1876.
And 1876 is the key context we need to focus on. This is the height of the Victorian Freeport era.
Right.
A lighthouse is a symbol of optimization, of welcome. It wasn't about keeping people out. It was about guiding them in safely. It represents global trade, American clippers, British steamers. It's an architecture of optimism.
And it's still there, a Grade 3 historic building. It's this solitary white structure against the blue Pacific. It feels very peaceful.
It does. But then you just turn your head and you see the counter-narrative.
Right there.
Just a stone's throw away, built roughly 60 years later in 1938, is the Cape Collinson Battery.
The mood shifts from welcome to defend.
Completely. I mean, by 1938, the optimism of the Freeport was long gone. The Japanese empire was expanding, and the British knew an invasion was not just possible, but likely. This battery wasn't built for trade. It was built for survival.
The architectural details in the military reports are fascinating. These weren't just standard square bunkers. The engineers used a very specific geometry.
They used rounded edges. And this is a crucial evolution in military engineering. If an artillery shell hits a flat wall, all that kinetic energy transfers directly.
Structural failure.
Right. But a rounded edge increases the chance of deflection. It literally bounces the attack away. It also breaks up the silhouette, making it much harder to spot from the sea.
They had two massive 6-inch guns, searchlights, on the cliffs. It was a proper fortress. But despite all this advanced engineering, the battery never really had its glorious stand, did it?
No. It's a story of strategic abandonment. On December 19, 1941, the Japanese had landed, the defense lines in the east were collapsing, and the command realized the battery was about to be overrun.
So instead of firing the guns,
they destroyed them.
Oh.
They blew up their own weapons to prevent the Japanese from capturing them and turning them against the city. It's a symbol of the total collapse of that defensive line.
Now, here is the detail that really stood out to me. The current status of that battery. It's probably one of the most ironic preservation stories in all of Hong Kong.
It is the concept of preservation through inaccessibility. Today, the main battery site is located inside the perimeter of the Cape Collinson Correctional Institution.
It's inside a prison.
It is inside a prison. So history is literally locked up. You can see it, but you absolutely cannot touch it. The prison walls are acting as a time capsule.
It makes you wonder, if it weren't inside a prison, would it even still be there?
Almost certainly not. If that land were accessible, it would have been bulldozed for luxury condos or a shopping mall 20 years ago. The forbidden zone of the prison is inadvertently the only thing protecting its heritage.
So for our listeners who want to see this hidden gem, we can't exactly tell them to break into a prison.
No, please do not do that.
Yeah.
You have to play detective. The move is to hike the Pottinger Peak Country Trail.
Okay, notes out, everyone. Pottinger Peak.
As you hike up, there's an old military observation post that looks down into the prison grounds. You can see the whole layout of the battery perfectly from there. But there's something even cooler.
The generator bunker.
Yes. Hidden in the brush, just outside the prison fence, is the concrete shell that used to power the searchlights.
So it's accessible.
It is. It's overgrown, covered in vines, but you can walk right inside.
And touching those cold, damp walls, that gives you a visceral sense of that 1941 tension that you just cannot get from a photograph.
It connects you to the fear and the urgency of that moment. It's incredible.
All right, let's head down from the hills to sea level. Story number 4 takes us to Chai Wan Park. Now, on a Sunday, this is just a typical urban green space, kids, ponds, people doing Tai Chi. But the land itself has this strange history of transformation.
It's a true palimpsest. History written over history. Before it was a park, this was Scout Hill.
Scout Hill.
Established in 1925, this was the headquarters for the Hong Kong Boy Scouts. For decades, this was where colonial youth went for training. It represented discipline, order, the Union Jack. the whole civilizing mission of the empire.
But in the 1980s, the city needed land more than it needed campgrounds.
So they flattened the hill. They literally removed the geography to create flat land for development. The camp became a park.
But during the construction, specifically during the dredging of the seabed nearby for reclamation, the workers hit something. Something hard.
They pulled up 2 massive barnacle-encrusted cannons.
In the bottom of the sea.
Yes. British naval cannons, most likely discarded in the mid-19th century. Back then, if a ship was damaged or they needed to lighten the load, they would sometimes just toss the old iron overboard.
So they were basically trash.
They were trash at the bottom of the bay.
And this is where the story gets really bizarre. They didn't put them in a museum. They didn't melt them down.
They put them in the new park.
Oh, it was just strange.
It's a fascinating synthesis. You have these instruments of lethal force, designed to shatter ship hulls and kill sailors. Now, just sitting there as decorative ornaments where toddlers ride their tricycles.
It's the domestication of war.
Exactly. And it represents 3 layers of time in one spot. You have the naval history with the cannons, the colonial social history with the ghost of Scout Hill, and then the modern civic history with the park, all occupying the same physical coordinate.
It really emphasizes that idea of the time corridor. You can't escape the past here. You end up playing on top of it.
Which brings us to our final story, the land that shouldn't even exist, Saiwan.
The ultimate artificial landscape. This entire area is a product of massive reclamation. It went from open sea to high-density residential towers almost overnight in the 1980s.
And usually when we talk about reclaimed land in urban studies, we kind of dismiss it as soulless.
Right. It has no deep history.
The ground itself is new. It's just concrete on top of sand.
But the research suggests we can find the soul of this area if we stop looking at the buildings and start looking at the food.
Food is the fossil record of demographics. In Saiwan, the transition from an industrial factory zone to a residential bedroom community is literally written on the menus.
So let's look at hidden gem number 5, the food map. The source material points to a place called Tak Ki.
Tak Ki is a relic of industrial time. It opens at 6 a.m. Now ask yourself, who eats a full meal at 6 in the morning?
Shift workers. People heading to the factory floor.
Exactly. It caters to people who work with their hands. The food is high-calorie, fast, cheap. It's fuel. That restaurant is a living remnant of the time when Chai Wan was the engine room of Hong Kong manufacturing.
But then you have a place like Sung Kwai Um.
Oh, legendary. Traditional BBQ pork char siu. People travel across the entire city for this. It represents the persistence of old craftsmanship.
Right.
It's not a chain restaurant. It's a master at work. And it bridges the gap between the old working class and the new foodies.
And then, right next door to these old school places, you see the shift.
The artisan coffee shops, the avocado toast, the cafes that don't even open until 10:00 a.m. because their customers work in offices or, they're freelancers.
So you can literally taste the demographic shift. You have the 6 a.m. canteen for the workers, the BBQ master for the locals, and the latte art for the new middle class, all on one street.
It creates this unique texture. And then you can walk it all off at the Saiwan Promenade.
The promenade is the final stop on our tour.
It's the constructed edge. It's a man-made coastline offering a view of the sea that used to be a defense perimeter. Now it's just a place to jog.
Yeah.
It brings the whole narrative full circle, from fortification, the battery, to recreation, the promenade.
So we've covered names, lighthouses, batteries, parks, and food. When we step back and look at this whole edge theory, what's the big takeaway for you?
I think the edge theory suggests that the periphery is the city's subconscious. The central, Causeway Bay, that's the ego. It projects what the city wants to be. Modern, shiny, efficient. And it destroys anything that doesn't fit that image.
But the edge?
The edge is the junk drawer. It keeps the things that don't fit but that the city can't quite get rid of.
Yeah.
The superstitions about names, the old bunkers inside prisons, the discarded cannons in the mud.
And maybe that's why these hidden gems feel so much more authentic than a polished museum exhibit. They're accidental survivors.
They are, and that leads to the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with. When you go out there, and I really hope you do, and you look at that battery inside the prison walls or the cannons in the park, ask yourself this: are you looking at history, or are you looking at the city's digestive process?
That is a vivid image, the city digesting itself.
Well, the city is constantly eating its own past. Sometimes it digests it completely, like the flattened Scout Hill. Sometimes it encapsulates it, like a prison battery, locking it away like a foreign object. And sometimes it regurgitates it as decoration like the cannons.
It challenges us to look at our own neighborhoods, doesn't it? What is locked away near you that's actually being saved by its isolation?
That's the question. We often think access is the best way to preserve history, but in Taiwan, we see that neglect and isolation were the real preservationists.
Well, for those in Hong Kong or planning a visit, the mission is clear. Don't just stay in Central. Take the Island Line all the way to the end. Get off at Taiwan.
Walk the Potager Peak Trail. Find that generator bunker in the bushes.
And definitely go stand in line for that char siu.
Absolutely essential.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the edge of the island. We'll see you on the next one.